Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to part 2 of my presentation on the August eclipses. And this is Thursday, and we are a few days past the lunar eclipse, and it certainly has been a triggered week. There have been a lot of things that have taken place this week, especially we see the firing up with the war of words between Trump and Kim Jong, and what's going on in North Korea is quite disturbing, and I think that it is, a very triggered period of time. And as I said, that both lunar eclipses and solar eclipses are more potent energies. So whatever it is that is taking place right now is at an intensified level. So I was just thinking about, just the various things that have happened quite recently. That lunar eclipse was a lunar eclipse in Aquarius, and that's the Aquarius-Leo axis. What has happened, and of course, sorry, I just have to pause here for a moment in my 10,000 things running through my head right at the moment. But I was just thinking that on the eclipse, we had a few things take place. That's when things really got hot with North Korea and Trump. Also, too, I just wanted to mention Rhinestone Cowboy, the death of Glenn Campbell. And I had mentioned in my last presentation about Nashville being a hotspot for this eclipse. And I wanted to make this point that Nashville is a hot spot, but when we look at the eclipses are relevant to, are going to feature where the eclipse path travels. But we can have reference points to the eclipses. For example, Nashville is the home of country music. It's the hub of the recording industry. For America, there for country music in particular, and Rhinestone Cowboy, which is so befitting for a Leo archetype as well too. The Flash. He wasn't a very flashy guy, but he was a Tennessee guy, but he has a reference point to Nashville. Do you see what I'm saying? So we can look at these eclipses for what their relevancy is, or what the it triggers something that, for example, with eclipses, when you come to if it's influential on your chart, and for example, you meet somebody, you could meet somebody under the eclipse path, and you might not be under that eclipse path, you might be someplace else, but there's some relevancy, somebody from who has a connection to that place. So I just wanted to mention that. And let me just go forward in my slides here. I put this slide up last time, and at any one given point in time, there are a number of eclipses that are operative. I talked about the Saros family of eclipses that run over about 12 to 1,500 years, and they will start at one pole or the other, either the North Pole or the South Pole, and they'll work their way around the globe to the other end. They'll start as partial eclipses, and they'll get to total eclipses in the middle. And I did say last time that they will be born and die and peak at approximately the same degree. I said last time that means that it goes around the zodiacal wheel once and a half. It actually goes around twice. I don't know why I said that, but just to give you that frame of reference. Also, I wanted to mention that the eclipse that is taking place, our great American eclipse, which is, of course, as you know, crossing over the U.S. there from Oregon to South Carolina. This is the first total solar eclipse that the United States is having since before it became a country. And there was an eclipse in 1918. There have been a few total eclipses that have gone over portions of the U.S., that has happened. There was an eclipse in 1918 that also went across the country, and that went from Washington state to Florida. But the difference between these two eclipses is that this particular eclipse on August 21st that we are experiencing exclusively begins and ends in its path of totality in the USA, starts in the USA. The eclipse in actuality starts in the Pacific Ocean someplace, but it first makes landfall in the USA. The eclipse in 1918 first was visible in Japan. And so that's the difference between these two eclipses. This solar eclipse on August 21st will continue over the top of South America, and will continue its journey. I think I've got another. Here's the eclipse path, and so if you're in the direct line of that eclipse path, then you're going to get that full breadth. But as you can see, the numbers there, it's going to be effective. It'll be. I'm sitting here in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I'm going to be at about 90% totality. My grandmother told me when she was a young girl, it was 1917, there were 3 total eclipses in that year, and she always told me about that, the darkening of the day, how the sun disappeared during the day, and I always remember that as very mystical and magical. And that was actually, she was from Europe, and it was around the same time that the children of Fatima saw the Virgin Mary, right? So I always remember the eclipse as being very magical and mysterious and so on. So if you're in the path of totality of this eclipse, that's going to be quite a unique event. Here's another close-up of, sorry, I wanted to go back there a bit to show you that path of totality. As you can see, where's my little doohickey here? I want to spotlight here, and I don't know if you can see that. I'm probably not using that correctly. Maybe I'll just leave that for now. But the path of totality starts about here. Now, sorry about that for just a moment here. And where's my next? So North Korea, of course, is threatening. Sorry, I can't see this in here. North Korea is threatening to, preparing now to fire missiles in the direction of Guam. And I wanted to mention this, the next slide here. Again, I mentioned this last time that an eclipse has several ways that it can be effective, and one of it is exactly where the eclipse path is happening. Of course, it's going to be very dynamic for you if it is hitting something directly in your chart. The first things we would look for is sun and moon, and then the angles of the chart, the ascendant, descendant. But if it's hitting any planet, it's going to be relevant, all right? And then we look at the geodetic regions, and I just wanted you to note that, of course, the geodetic region for the lunar eclipse was Aquarius, so it would have been in this region here. The solar eclipse for the 21st of August is this region right here, which encompasses Korea and Japan and Guam and so forth, right? I think Guam is just about on the line there. I think the eclipse, I wasn't able to really key into there exactly where Guam might be, but it's the eclipse is sort of in the proximity. It's in the Pacific Ocean anyway, so it's about there. But I wanted to, and so this is the thing is with the geodetic regions where, it's not only the midheaven, these things up at the top are the midheaven of the chart, but also where the grand cross elements are in the chart. So they're more regions, and certainly where the transits are going. The hot spot of Uranus through Aries has been, in this particular region for quite some time. It's still traveling through that. But just wanted to mention, let me just see what the next, I'll just put that up while I'm talking here. That eclipse in 1918, which was a total eclipse, which began in Japan. It's a very interesting thing. It was not of the same Cero series of this August 21st Cero series, this total solar eclipse, started in Japan. And 1918 was, the World War I was operative, right? And the U.S. was involved in that. This is very interesting because in 1918, the position of Uranus was exactly where it is now for the August 21st eclipse in Aries. And this August 21st eclipse, we also look at triggers. I'm not sure I probably don't have a slide for it, but in 1945, the eclipse of 1945, which was one of Cero series 145 that we're experiencing with this solar eclipse on August 21st. It's of the same family. In 1945, sorry, what date was that? 1 month after the eclipse, I had it written down here someplace. I can't find my note right at the moment. July 9, 1945 was that eclipse which touched this one, so that again is a trigger. And 1 month later, August 9, the world's first nuclear bomb was used. The U.S. bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki a few days later. 140,000 people died in Hiroshima, 70,000 in Nagasaki. So we have this eclipse 1918, which started in Japan, and the 1945 eclipse, which is relevant to the solar eclipse of August 21st of this year. And, we have World War I there, and we have a trigger with Japan, 1945. We have that first nuclear bomb. Now what are we doing? There's a nuclear threat, not saying that that is going to happen. And my sense about it is that it's really a war on words, but it certainly is keeping the tension on the planet. There's it's a trigger at any moment. Anything can happen. Certainly, we've had the Leo eclipse brings in the Aquarius archetype, and we have Uranus in aspect to this eclipse. And Uranus is a wild card, anything goes. Eclipses are wild cards, anything goes. So I just wanted to bring that up in terms of all that dynamic tension. We also have 1918 was interesting because that eclipse was the death of Trump's grandfather, and Trump's grandfather made his fortune on the gold rush, which is interesting. And we have Donald Trump being very featured with the August 21st eclipse because it's falling very strong on his chart. And of course, we have the investigation into the campaign, but also too, there's an issue about Trump's financial dealings, right? So again, eclipses, as I think I put here on one page, eclipses can, sorry, that's the next page here. One eclipse can start something, another can finish it. Just because, and the eclipses will be relevant in your chart every 18 and a few days. There will be another eclipse that is about 10 degrees from the last eclipse, and if you follow that around your chart, you may see triggers. You may or may not have planets there, but we are operating under two dynamics. With the eclipses, we're operating under the Cero series, and then we're operating in the 18 years, by the way, that is 19 years is a lunar return, and we have the Metonic cycles as well too, which are every 19 years. They repeat at the same degree. Cero series, moves along and does not repeat at that same degrees, except for beginning, middle, and end. But the Metonic cycles do. So we're referencing that and going back with those last cycles. And it was the last eclipse. I'm again looking for my notes here. Oh yeah, so the last for the Metonics for Donald Trump's chart was father died in 1999, and that would have completed a cycle for him as well too. In the 1990s, Trump wasn't doing very well at the beginning of the 1990s, but by 1999 he was the comeback kid, right? You know, so eclipses, you know, can be, you know, they're peak moments, but how they work in your own life can be, you know, at any direction, so to speak. The eclipse before that, the Metonic cycle for Donald Trump, 1981, Ivanka Trump was born, and also her hubby. So, you know, it's very interesting detective work. I think that, you know, a lot of astrology we learn in hindsight. So if you are interested to go back and do some research on your own chart, you may see these peaks for yourself in terms of outstanding years and so forth for yourself, what might have been taking place. Here is the lunar eclipse that just passed on Monday, August 7, and I've drawn it up for an Aries rising just so that we can look at that easily. The eclipse is 15 degrees Aquarius, and the sun is 15 degrees of Leo. As I said previously, both the sun and the moon are in a culminating pattern to the karmic axis. So we're still working our way with, you know, with finishing off a program. And at the same time, Mars and the sun have gone new phase as of the end of July, which begins a new 2-year pattern. So when we are culminating, we're both completing and we are seeding. But again, the completion point for a lunar eclipse, it brings things to culmination. We have a lunar eclipse in Capricorn, sorry, I meant to say Aquarius. And this is, with Aquarius, we have the ability, you know, what happens with the eclipses is that they are more well-defined endings and beginnings and fruitions and culminations here. So at this point, you know, this is a soul program here that is now on a fruition point or a completion point. And with Aquarius, we have a chance to liberate, or we have a chance to break the chain, or break the routine, or, you know, break the repeating theme pattern, because this is a shattering through or a breakthrough point. So in terms of that shattering through, you know, one of two things, you know, Aquarius it is an awakening influence, and we certainly see that there is a lot going on the planet. There is, you know, there's a shattering through and an awakening piece, a coming alive moment. And that's of two things. Either we are resolving the past, but we're taking this up a new level. The moon, the south node, even the, you know, the karmic imprint of being with the nodal axis, this is the past. We are resurrecting the past in some dynamic way with the intention of bringing it to a closure piece, or, you know, really to sever ties with that. You know, and the Aquarius piece of that, Aquarius, you know, there's a lot to say about that. It's a fragmentation piece. You know, it is, you know, it is, you know, a one-off, or it is something unique and special. It can be something that is very, very, very significant to the moving forward piece, right? You know, so that's that dynamic. With the sun and the moon in new phase in Leo, this is bringing new information to the surface that can move the past forward, move the past to some kind of new level. And so, you know, before we can do that, we have to expose it. We have to bring it up to the surface. We have to see it, right? You know, so this is an uncovering time frame. I said this in the last segment as well, too. We are still under the operation, and on Saturday, on August 12, we are going to start Mercury retrograde. You'll notice in this chart here, I don't know where my pointer is, 6th house, Mercury is in the sign of Capricorn, I'm sorry, Virgo. It's at 10 degrees of Virgo, and it is moving towards, it will retrograde at 11, and we have Neptune at 13 degrees of Pisces. Mercury and Neptune are very, very important to this transition period because they are the rulers of the karmic axis that we just completed an 18 cycle of. That whole 18-month cycle, which ended on May 9, was a matter of discovering missing keys and about dismantling and revealing. As I said, everything that's dismantled here, everything that's falling to the wayside is meant to reveal, whatever that is left in the bucket, right? Whatever it is left to be discovered. And so as this program is taking place here, Mercury and Neptune will perfect. Mercury is retrograde from August 12th to September 5th. From August 30th to September 5th, it backs up into the sign of Leo and re-triggers the degree of the solar eclipse on August 21st. So we've got lots of triggers. By September 19, Mercury and Neptune are coming to an exact opposition, which is perfecting that, and then moving forward. So, and then we still have a little bit further, so I don't have my calendar in front of me to tell you when the Mercury finishes, but a few weeks later we'll finish in Virgo and move on. But we've still got some residue of uncovering to do. And certainly just yesterday there was an announcement that 2 weeks ago there was a raid on Donald Trump's ex-campaign manager. Robert Mueller is on his mission, Saturn and Sagittarius, to get down to the bottom line and get down to the truth of what actually was going on with the campaign and so on and so forth. This is still, that Mercury and Neptune is still finishing off the business of the past 18 months. The time that, that the campaign was happening and Trump got elected and whatever else was going on for your life. That's one piece of that. If you didn't feel in your own life, the day of the eclipse might have been a very easy day. It was an easy day for me. Maybe it was an easy day for you. But right after that, all this, back and forth happened with North Korea and Trump, the fire and fury and power piece of that, taking place. Jupiter was trying this partial lunar eclipse. So, again, the Jupiter in Libra piece is, Jupiter is an expansion curve wherever it goes, and Aquarius, of course, is, this is bringing up the political scene, of course. Jupiter expands the enmeshment piece of that because, now that Trump and North Korea are engaging, of course, it's pulling in the rest of the world, so nothing happens in isolation. But, this is a transit here, and the eclipses, as I said, are plucking like the string of a musical instrument. They're resonant, beforehand, and that resonance continues. But we see all the triggers as the transits are moving over all of these moving pieces. Jupiter in relationship to this eclipse here, as I talked about last time, has been recalibrating with Pluto in Capricorn since last November. It's been information gathering, it's been evaluating, and it's now at peak to move into a next cycle. And this may be for you as well too. It's that I got to make a change. I really don't want to stay here any longer. I don't like my job. I don't like my relationship. I don't like me. I need to get on with things. And maybe, there's been this whole process of you, working through things, but maybe no action taking on it, or a feeling that you can't, or what have you. And now that Jupiter and Pluto are where they are at, they're now, set for all of that information gathering. Something is synthesizing now with that. Again, we have over the next couple of weeks, Venus in Cancer, aspecting Jupiter, opposing Pluto. On the, let me just go to the next page, the solar eclipse. Ceres will be 17 degrees of Cancer, opposing Pluto. Ceres is a resurrection piece, and Ceres is the goddess of the seasons, and I always think of her as a resurrection or rebirth or new cycle beginning. So both Venus and Ceres have been working with Jupiter and Pluto to kind of bring up the rear, so to speak, and to get, again, both of those are in the sign of Cancer, which is again, an evaluation or a resurrection or a processing on the past and on security issues and self-preservation needs and looking how do I play it safe, or do I move on, or what's secure, or how do I nail it down, or all of these kinds of items here, and these are all getting to a place where the switch pattern with the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse coming up, it's a natural progression for you to say in your life. It's a switch pattern that goes on with consciousness and then is reflected environmentally for you in terms of, oh, well, now I see how I could pick up A and B and connect that together, or maybe I'll just try this, or maybe I'll just start the process of looking around, or maybe I'll explore, kind of trying a new me on for size. Boom. Oh, wow, look at that's actually working for me. Or, oh boy, it opened a new door. Think of the eclipses as portals, but I think that, we're kind of waiting for other shoe to drop or so on. Eclipses can be disruptive energy. They shake things up. If it is cataclysmic, or if it is, chaotic or so on, we generally say that, there's a resistance pattern. There's something there that has to be broken down. And there's a lot of fear-based, especially Venus and Cancer, Ceres and Cancer, Pluto and Capricorn, all the transits that are going on here to make us feel pretty nervous about what comes next. Of course, we're all moving into new territory on a personal level and on a collective level. It's always very frightening when there's the great unknown in front of you. But, change is inevitable. And if you are welcoming that change, or at least saying, I know that it can't stay like this, or I know that that it is going to move along in some way, and I don't know whether I'm ready for it or not, but at least acknowledging that it could shift at any moment. I think it helps you to not be so white-knuckled on the steering wheel. You say, if you just kind of prepare. It's a very weird thing to say, but at one time I'd had this, when I was very, very young, I had this prediction that I was going to get in a car accident and that I would be fine. And I was 16 years old, and I was driving on the highway in winter, and I lost control of the car. And I remember that prediction that said, you're going to get in a car accident, but everything will be fine. And honest to God, I released my grip on the steering wheel because I wasn't able to control. I barely missed a car. I spun out and I wound up in the ditch, and not a scratch, right? And it's like, I always remember that as kind of a symbolic thing whenever I'm really frightened of, something that I'm fearful will come to fruition. If I relax my body, you won't get as big whiplash on it. So, just to kind of give that piece to you as you move forward with whatever it is. And, as I said, this is a portal time frame for opening up all of this. And we still have time to go here. We're just in between these eclipses. So the eclipse on the 21st of August, it's a total solar eclipse. And if you'll notice in the 5th house there, the sun and moon are now new phase. What happens is that the nodes are moving backwards, and the sun and moon are moving forward. So they've already surpassed, and they're moving like this away from one another, which is setting a new play into motion here. And so when we have a Leo archetype here, then we have in any case, a north node in Leo. The nodes operate both. They're evolving points, and they're opening up the primary work to be done over this 18-month cycle of the nodes traveling through Aquarius and Leo, South Node in Aquarius. This is, again, an awakening pattern. A South Node brings us to a composite of the past that we are bringing forward. There are things within your soul that you said, I want to bring this, I want to awaken this in me. I want to bring this back alive. I want to shatter through my own sound barrier. I want to reawaken myself. And I want to recollect those fragmented pieces of myself. And I want to put myself back together as whole. And that is the North Node in Leo. The North Node in Leo, and with the sun there, and this solar eclipse, this is a fruition point. This gives, it creates the optimum circumstances for all of that to happen. We say with the Aquarius piece, it's the snake shedding its skin. For you to have an exceptional ability to springboard yourself someplace new. Leo Aquarius is all about reinvention, personal reinvention. And this is, with the dynamic of that, the tension that is naturally between the nodes anyway. We have polarization within. We have the social dynamics of what's going on out there in the world and the social trends and how we contribute to that and how we are a part of that, and then how we want to separate from that and find our own unique voice within all of that. So we've got, and of course just out there, we've got political conflict, and we've got heart conflict, and and both of those political, the social dynamics of your individual life and how you make your way out in the world. We've got both of those things going on right now. Another thing that this lunar eclipse, for Canada, is that we just found out that the Saudis are using, military vehicles that Canada has made to, on their own civilians, which leaves, Canada in a moral dilemma. What do we do with this? We've already got a contract to manufacture, and it's all about the money. Do we, is the money as important as the, the quality of, as the morality of that, and so on and so forth. So we've got like lots of things going on, but this is again the Mars position to that solar eclipse is still in culminating pattern. And when you have that culminating pattern, what you also have with this lunar eclipse, which was culminating on the north and south nodes, and the Mars position culminating on the north node, Mercury and Neptune, which are still on a finishing off pattern, and so on. When we do these kind of finishing off pieces, we are seeding for some time down the road. When news cycles get underway, we don't really see what they're about until we come back to it later. Later on, we look back and go, wow, all of that fired up right then. And I didn't really understand all of, what was infused in that moment, but look at where it's taken me now. So we're still, despite the fact that eclipses, are really can, as I say, end soul workbooks and start new soul workbooks. There's still some dovetailing yet to go. And that dovetailing is also with Uranus, as I mentioned in the previous talk as well, having stationed retrograde on August 2nd, and it will continue in retrograde until January 2nd. It's in the sign of Aries. So again, that Uranus in Aries and retrograde, relative to the Mars transit, the Mars-Sun new phase that is taking us over this 2-year period, that retrograde is still, targeting something from the past that needs more exposure, needs more tapping into, more accessing. And so we've got all the way until January to be, again, laying out the framework, so to speak, of what will take us forward. I don't know whether I put that up there. Oh, here's the Mercury retrograde cycle. So just to show you that Mercury, 6th house, you'll see it at 11 degrees of Virgo, and the Neptune in the 12th house, 13 degrees of Pisces. And on the Mercury retrograde, notice that Mars, which sits in the 5th house, 15 degrees of Leo, is re-triggering the lunar eclipse degree, which was 15 degrees Aquarius Leo. So, this is where we see the triggers, and again, somebody said to me the other day, I don't understand how eclipses generate ahead of time, but we always have to remember when we look at these things astrologically, we're looking at cycles. Cycles are in motion already and they continue after. We just have the, when we have the points that they hit, these are actually midpoints for a process that is already in the works. So Mercury will be triggering lots over this, next month or so, and continuing on. We also have talked about Jupiter being involved in the lunar eclipse and so forth. We have Jupiter involved in lunar eclipse. We have Uranus in exact trine. See it there, 28 degrees on the August 21st, 28 degrees Aries retrograde, August 21st, the lunar eclipse, 28 Leo. That aspect is actionable, it's action taking and so forth. At the end of September 27, 28, Jupiter will oppose Uranus on the 27th, and then Pluto will turn direct on the 28th. So we've got triggers right through sorry about that, through the month of September. You're going to see that kind of continuing on. And such is the nature of evolution. It's one thing after another thing to build all of that up. Let me move forward here in my little discourse. And again, we have many charts for the USA. I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep my timetable here. Okay, many charts for the USA, and we have this one, the 2:13 a.m. chart, which puts that lunar eclipse at the top of the chart, and that's certainly 15 degrees Aquarius, the axis there between the 9th, 10th house. If this chart is correct here, we see that moon triggering the moon of the USA chart, and certainly hurtling the US into a political conflict. That's the nature of moon Aquarius. And here's the USA chart with that eclipse, and I think I see here that I'm already needing to move faster again here, but diplomacy issues here. Notice the Jupiter aspect, 17 degrees of Libra in the 5th house, very close to the progressed Mars position, and just had been back and forth over the Saturn for a while. If this chart is correct, in the 4th house of the USA chart, which signifies kind of a new reality base for the 4th house is the populace. Interestingly, that 28 degrees trines the Juno in the 8th house, and that's a financial thing. So I think the stock market is doing rather well. Uranus on this eclipse on the progressed Venus. So despite whatever Trump is doing, jobs and numbers and so forth are doing okay there. Here's Donald Trump's chart, and with the partial lunar eclipse. And we see that the Mars position on his Pluto, this is a real triggering aspect, that that moon in Aquarius has triggered his Ceres, which kind of is a is going to launch something. It's going to again fire up something, and certainly not too many people are thinking that his was that a threat that he made to North Korea? It wasn't overly wise of him to be sparking things as he does. But there's this grand trine in the chart, and I think that there's a lot of ability to dampen that down. I would say, and that's what Rex Tillerson was trying to do the other day. All right, so and there are many astrologers who are talking about Donald Trump's chart, and here's the thing about if you are born on an eclipse, which Donald Trump was, and this is something, if you ever look at a chart, for the astrologers out there, if you see the sun and moon in close proximity to the nodal axis, then by all means do your research. Now with the computers, we don't use the ephemeris so much, and we don't look at things so much, but that's a clue that if a person has their sun or moon very, very close by conjunction or opposition to the nodes, then we have a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, and we can see that with Donald Trump right here. And so when you are born with an eclipse, then your life eclipses everyone else's. And that's kind of an interesting statement, because Donald Trump is really eclipsing the country. What's going on for him, who he is, how he is acting, is eclipsing whatever the machine called the USA was on its way towards doing. You see, he's kind of usurped it to a certain extent, I would think. And I would also think that Trump's ambitions here are also perhaps usurping his family, because this eclipse, he has the moon conjunct his south node in the 4th house, and the 4th house and the moon, and and all of that. That's a reference to family. So and again, it would suggest that he has a very dynamic karmic, set up with his family, and of course it's a family business, right? And so all of his members are there. So that's a whole, whole tribe. That's also seen in his chart with Saturn and Venus in the 11th house in Cancer, right? It's everybody together, right? So it's all of that. But this transit here with the solar eclipse on the 21st, I think Saturn, you see there down there, the outer wheel. The inner wheel is, for those who don't know, Trump's chart, and the outer wheel is the solar eclipse. So if you look down there in the 4th house, that thing that looks like an H, that's Saturn, and it's right in the inner wheel there, just right on his moon there. I think that's putting tremendous pressure on his family, right? And Saturn on that moon on the 25th, Saturn will station direct. And it stations direct at that 2111, and his moon is 2112. So that's really, quite intense on his chart. Saturn in Sagittarius, that's the mission of the higher ups, or the authority, to get down to the bottom here of truth seeking. And so that's the position that Robert Mueller is playing, I think, here to hire the grand jury, set up the grand jury, and to raid the Trump campaigns, a thing that we just found out about yesterday, but happened 2 weeks ago, and so on. So, continuing pressure. And the other thing with that is, as I said in the last segment, what is this eclipse about? Well, Gemini is about everything. Of course, Gemini is an archetype. It is an archetype of duplicity. So we've got all the themes of duplicity here. Is there or isn't there? In all of those different things. But it's all the other things that he's doing as well too. But the Gemini piece is the shoot from the mouth piece as well too, and that Saturn is putting under pressure of him to stop tweeting, the Gemini archetype, or not to be so reactive. Certainly that lunar eclipse falling in the lunar eclipse falling in his 6th house in Aquarius. Aquarius is a reactive archetype, and my personal opinion is that Kim Jong is probably just absolutely delighted, because he's getting so much attention. This is exactly, Trump is playing into his hands with his, firing off, their piece of that. But in any case, back to the solar eclipse. As I said before, this is the lunar eclipse was the Mars transit on his Pluto. The solar eclipse is picking up the energy from the Mars, delivering it to the ascendant. And, Mars is activation, and it's aggression, and it's, it's the push, and it's all of that. It's very willful energy here. Mars is, desire and action. And we've got that Leo here of again, there's some debate over Trump's chart. Is it in the first house or is it in the 12th house? And I believe that his birth time, as was given on his birth certificate, is correct, because Mars in the 12th house, his statement, I think Mars in the first house is like, just get out of my way, I'm going to do it. But Mars in the 12th house says, I'm the only one who can do it. And I think we've heard a lot of that out of him. But again, we look at dispositors, so that Leo ascendant goes up to the, to the sun up there in the 10th house. And that's about, control or no control and how we're taking control and so on. And I didn't put the planetary nodes in there, but its planetary node is right, Uranus is right on that north node, sitting in between the north node and sun. So that, it kind of destines him for a public social role of being in charge in some way, but it also makes him very much a wild card. And as I said previously, I think he is serving the purpose of disruption and destabilization, which allows then for all of the other opportunists to play their dynamic. And we could get into more, but I don't think I'll go to that that next level up, because that would be a whole a conversation on the nature of evil. But certainly we've got some rampant stuff going on there. Let's move on then. Yeah, and this is putting in the inner wheel, Donald Trump's natal chart, and the middle wheel with the solar eclipse, his progressed chart, and the solar eclipse is the outer wheel, and his lunar progressed moon position is 4 degrees of Leo. So this moon is going to move along at 1 degree per month. That will mean 6 months for it to conjunct his Pluto, another 8 months for it to conjunct his progressed Pluto, 9 months to be on Mercury opposing Ceres, and kind of goes around his chart. It's sitting in the 12th house here. It's moving along. It has, let me see, about 24 months to reach that solar eclipse degree. And this is where, again, eclipses, are resonant, they have this magnetic energy that resonates over a period of time, right? And for Donald Trump, again, Sun Mars have initiated a new 2-year program. Donald's moon is coming up to that 28 degrees, his progressed moon, in 24 months. That's about that Venus cycle, and so on. So you can see that, if you want to play astrological detective, there's endless fascination. It's why I love I love astrology so much, because there's never a dull moment when it comes to astrological research, right? Here's the point. February 15 of 2018, there will be a solar partial eclipse, which is not as potent, but I think it's quite relevant, because the lunar eclipse on the 21st of August is 28 degrees of Leo, and the solar eclipse on the 15th of 2018 is 27 degrees Aquarius. So we have here, getting to the next information peak in terms of what the new programming is all about, right? At that time, Saturn will have moved into Capricorn, and it's moving along towards, getting towards a balsamic relationship with Pluto, which brings us to the 2020 mark, where there's going to be a culmination in the sign of Capricorn. Also this eclipse, by the way, February 15, 2018, notice the karmic axis, 14 degrees Leo Aquarius. Again, the lunar eclipse on August 7 was 15 degrees. So this is bringing these eclipses in August to their next level up. For you in your personal life, as I said, look at this as a 6-month project. Whatever it is that is now firing up within you, and if you don't know what it is, this is what I always say, is just start putting left foot in front of right foot. Something is going to happen. And whatever it is, take it as more significant than it would be ordinarily, significant, important, with great potency. This is the nature of Leo. The creative moment is infused with so much more dynamism than it would be at another point in time. And that's like, Aquarius is that statement, as I said, the severing piece of that. If you have an addiction going or so on, addictions are very, very hard to get over. And with this kind of transit, you say, okay, I'm going to quit. I finally am going to quit. Well, the solar eclipse on the North Node allows for fruition. It sets the environmental conditions. This is what the nodes do. And with the Neptune transits doing, what Chiron and Pisces is doing, and so on, it brings that stage of potency, whatever it is on brew. It brings up that catalog so that you now have a toolkit. That's what the transiting nodes are. They're toolkits. They set up environmental circumstances. This optimizes this time space, and certainly Saturn, is a piece of that, and so forth. So that's what we have going for us right now. Now here's North Korea, and I've been very concerned about North Korea since Kim Jong took power, And this is a chart for North Korea. We have, September 10 is another chart. You can use that if you want to. But notice here's the solar eclipse. Look at the 9th house. The inner wheel is North Korea's chart. Look at the Saturn position, 28 degrees of Leo. The solar eclipse, 28 degrees of Leo. If this chart is, I don't know where I got this time frame. It was rectified by Mark Penfield, I think. But that's a 9th house. 9th house is a worldly archetype, and this is about increasing one's status in the world, right? So, and of course, Leo is about putting on a show, and it's about the dramatics of it, and so forth, right? So, and certainly that's what North Korea is doing right now. It's showing off, right? And so forth. So we see that this is a statement for that. And again, as I said, this solar eclipse, that Uranus position in the 5th house, and Uranus is an archetype of science and technology. Scorpio is the nuclear piece of that, which is part of the Grand Cross. Whenever we talk about Leo, we're talking about the 4 other points: Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio, right? So we're bringing in all of those dynamics here. It's very telling when we look at this. Here's Kim Jong-un's chart. Kim Jong-un, his chart here. Again, we don't know his birth data. We don't know whether it's 1983 or 84. I'm going with the 1984 chart because I read somewhere about a relative who said that she babysat her son and Kim Jong, and they were the same age. And that's why I'm going with this chart. I put up a noon chart for this chart, so the houses are not correct with this chart. But we see Pluto has been going back and forth over Kim Jong's sun in Capricorn, which is a perfect symbol for a dictatorship. But what do we see here? Again, the eclipse at 28 degrees Leo. He has Jupiter at 27 degrees Sagittarius and Neptune at 29 degrees of Sagittarius, if this chart is correct. And Uranus by transit in the eclipse is 28 degrees Aries, so is grand trine in fire. Well, the Jupiter in Sagittarius, that's a very boastful archetype anyway, and the Jupiter and Neptune is an exposing archetype, and here's somebody who thinks that he can go anywhere and do anything, I think, but anyway, this kind of eggs him on, gives him maybe I'll say drunk on power. We could say that out of this transit. Oh, sorry. I think I might not have. Do I have that? Sorry, I didn't have this in the chart. But notice in Kim Jong's chart, if this is correct, that his Saturn position is 14 degrees of Scorpio, And I'm sorry I didn't put up the chart here, but the lunar eclipse on Monday, August 7, was 15 degrees Aquarius Leo. So it triggered the Saturn. Saturn in Scorpio, you know, is a signature. You know, Scorpio is very manipulative. And I think that there, you know, there's, you know, and it's a hidden agenda thing, and certainly the hidden agenda to get this nuclear power together. But these announcements and these, I think he's toying with the world to a certain extent, but in a very serious way. And you know, the intention to fire into Guam, 35 miles off the coast of Guam. I mean, that's, you know, that's that kind of thing where you're in a fight with somebody and you say, you know, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, and then the other person punches you. You know, it's like, you know, there's yeah, it's, you know, it's a trigger. Like if someone else took action first, it would give him all the justification and rationalization to fire off, you know, and then he would say, well, you know, I'm just being a good leader and protecting my people, and, you know, blah 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 blah, right? You know, so you know, you know, he is again definitely to be watched. And again, that's Uranus retrograde here is going to come back next year and trine that Jupiter and trine that Neptune and move along. Saturn will be on that Jupiter Neptune later on this year. Saturn will go on to the Mercury and so on. So, you know, Kim Jong's chart is pretty triggered, and the eclipses have fired him all up. And the solar eclipse in Leo, you know, that's creating a whole new program that's starting for all of us in creating a new reality base. You know, what kind of new reality base are we creating? It's a new world. Leo Aquarius, it's a new reality. It's a new time has come moment for everyone. And Kim Jong is a key player in that. It's pretty amazing. Here's Donald Trump's secondary progressed. And I would not normally, you know, usually you're supposed to use the matrix of the natal chart, but I just think that it is demonstrating here with the lunar eclipse, you know, falling in his 4th house. And, you know, we've got wild card, you know, Donald Trump in action here. You know, maybe I'll move on. I think I probably said enough about his chart. So I think I have come pretty much to the end of the material that I wanted to share for today. And again, I want to encourage you that this is a very, very, very potent time frame. It's a seeding time frame, the next 6 months. The rest of the month, coming up on the 15th, the Mercury retrograde transit, the 15th could trigger something. We have triggers throughout next week, and we have the eclipse on the 21st, and we have, I've forgotten what, I think it's Mars on the 26th, and then we've got Mars and Mercury re-triggering the lunar eclipse from the 30th of September to the 5th of September. And then we've got trigger dates all the way through September and the end of September and moving forward. So a lot of action, and I encourage you to have bravery, which be brave of heart. That is a Leo archetype. Allow your heart to lead the way. Allow yourself the opportunity to try on something brand new, to break free of, you know, to reinvent. This is personal reinvention time, 18-month cycle of intensification and opportunity all together for you right now. If you want a new life, if you want to chart a new course direction, you know, this is the very, very best time frame to do it, and you don't have to know everything at once. This is about discovering as you go along. This is experiential. So this is firing up time. One piece of information is going to lead you to the next piece of information, which is going to sort out the whole puzzle for you. So be courageous, go with all your heart. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Rose. That's fantastic. Would you take a few questions?
Sure.
Great. Could you please click on Stop Share at the top of the screen? Great. Yeah, Wanda, go ahead, please, Wanda.
Hi, Rose. I just had a question on these eclipse points hitting one's nodal axis, whether it's squaring the nodal axis or actually conjuncting for those who have the nodes in Aquarius and Leo.
Well, yeah, again, as I said, the potency of what you are recalling. First of all, remember that the nodes are relevant to the moon, and the moon is memory imprints, and we're bringing them forward. And the south node, if you have a south node connection here, you have one of three conditions: relive, fruition, or relive in fruition. Okay. And if that's taking place for you, that's a recall of significance. And so there's great potency in that. If it's a north node, what this is doing is it is creating, circumstances. It is bringing in some, opportunity to, especially with the sun on the north node or so on. It is. It's kind of like opening up a box and allowing you to see what's inside. The node that you have is always the node that you have, that content right there. But when you have a transit over it, it's animating it, it's bringing it to life. So this brings up a new perception, a new consciousness, a new environmental circumstance that is going to allow you to make use of that energy to evolve whatever it is at that south node content. All right. So this is like bringing in you have some new thought about doing something, then you can take that and apply it to that which you were recalling from the past and move that forward. It's a new way of perceiving or a new way of relating to that. And it allows you to create more advance. It's something additional, some new information, something additional that's going to help you to accelerate. And again, any time that we have, the nodes being active, we're at a karmic, kind of peak in terms of, it's very important to watch those nodes, because those are going to be those moments when there's actionable taking place in your life, when there's an acceleration on circumstances and consciousness and event. You kind of go like, I've been trying to work this out, I've been trying to work this out, I've been trying to work, oh, well, geez, this new thought just came in, and just like that kind of, just a smidgen switch can, can fire up something. It's like you just touch it and it goes boom, So you have more opportunity with that. That's going to be very dynamic for you in your life. Look around, when you come out of that, you're going to say, wow, that was really an important time frame, or that was really an important circumstance, or really important whatever. Does that help?
Yes, I did want to clarify the difference for those who have the transiting node squaring their natal node.
Squaring out, yeah. So, squaring is a, that is a coming to a critical mass point. As I said, like the south node is a recall or fruition or so on, and the north node is can be like a processing, but the squares are activation points. So this is, and depending on, how that's, it's too complicated to really get into right here, but that's going to be, again, eventful or actionable, or you're standing at a dilemma point, and, as a critical mass, and this is a point of, I'll say it's a saturation point. So, falling back on one, falling back on the information of the other, going back like that. And when it gets to that critical mass of that square, you're standing right there, and that is allowing for a breakthrough. Okay. Again, whether it's action, and sometimes that happens through circumstances that either explode or disintegrate, or it is that final moment that you say, something just switched inside of me, something just went off, something just went on. That's the difference between them. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another question?
Anyone else for another question?
Rose, this is
Yeah.
Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi. I have Uranus conjunct my natal ascendant at 28 degrees Aries, and it's trine during the eclipse my natal Venus and my natal Saturn at 1 degrees Virgo. And the Saturn is at one of the corners of my mystic rectangle. Do you have any insights about this? I'm feeling perhaps uncharacteristically calm. And I was just wondering if there was any.
Yeah, Carolyn, it's very hard for me to comment on chart details like that. You know, I need to see the whole chart, and a lot of times I'm very right brain, and I don't hold on to things too much.
I understand.
But I will say that you know that the fact that there are trines there, you know, they facilitate the energy, and so when you have more you know, the squares and the oppositions and even conjunctions, those are what we call dynamic. And so they can be more in the line of jarring or so on. If you have, you know, a more sense of calm about that, then it may be that you are primed and ready for, you know, that Uranus to do you some good. You know, again, I'll tell you, I had Uranus go over my ascendant too. It was quite shocking when it did, and you know, when it was prior to, I didn't feel anything, but the moment it hit my ascendant, it was something. Has the because Uranus is retrograded, has it moved over your ascendant and into your first house yet?
Yes. No, not into my first house. It's been going back and forth. My ascendant is 28, and Uranus has been at 28 kind of. It went there, now it's retrograde, but it's still on the 28 degrees, I believe.
Yeah, but did it actually cross over the ascendant? Did it, you know, like, I mean, I get to be a stickler for things like that. You know, it could be, you know, 28, 27, and you're 28, 35, you know, then it still hasn't crossed over your ascendant, it's still active. But this is what I will say. Transits that take a long time, you know, when they're going back and forth, I've got the same thing, it's going over my son. You know, when a transit takes a long time going over, I mean, maybe I could say the same thing for myself because my sun is 28 degrees, 27 degrees Aries. I'm not feeling that Uranus transit in terms of tension oriented, but when a transit is lengthy because it's going to have retrogrades, and it's a slow mover and so on, this gives you time to acclimatize. It's sometimes when things go bang over that you know, you feel like you got slammed against something. So it may not be such a bad transit for you. Again, like I say, if you are, you know, moving along at the right speed for yourself, then that might be, you know, moving along into a new you at a level that you feel, you know, is well timed. Right?
I do. That helps a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any final questions or comments? Okay, well, we'll end here. Thank you so much, Rose, and thank you from all of us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Rose.